Hey folks, it's Bill Swift from Swift Canoe, and we are very excited that we are now building these beautiful Badger canoe paddles in-house right at our own Swift wood shop. And what better than to have Mr. Badger, Mike Ramsey, tell you all about the paddles today.
Thanks, Bill. So we've been building Badger paddles since 2009, and one of the best things that we did over the last 2 years is partner up with Swift at the Swift Wood Shop just down the road from where we are right now to build Badger paddles. I'd really like to show you what we've got for this year, because we've got some great stuff for 2022. So Badger likes to build traditional one-piece paddles out of one piece of beautiful Canadian hardwood if we can. So this is a piece of walnut right here. This is a piece of sassafras out of Southern Ontario right here. And this is some Southern Ontario cherry right here. And those are the three types of wood we like to use. There's a lot of beautiful laminate paddles out there. We are the guys that you get a traditional one-piece paddle from, and there's some really nice details that we like to put into our paddles. First off, they are all finished and made by hand mostly, so each paddle does have its own unique characteristics. When you shape things by hand, you can adjust. Every piece of wood is different. You can adjust the flex of a paddle by the amount of thickness it is through there. We put this dihedral ridge in each one of the paddles to give it some stiffness through this area, but also to give you a bit of a smoother flow through the water. So this is the traditional grip on a Badger paddle. It's a nice rounded top, really fits nicely in your hand. That's what most of our models have. We do offer on some models and on some custom paddles what we call a modified Northwoods grip. It's not your traditional Northwoods grip, but it's the same idea. A Northwoods grip allows you to hold the paddle up top and maybe adjust your grip to a place right here. Normal Northwoods grip's really skinny through this part of the paddle. We've added a little bit more meat in this area, and it makes it a little more comfortable if you're actually going to hold the paddle like this. It also, especially this is a shorter 54-inch paddle, and when you've got a long blade and a short shaft, the swing weight gets a little bit heavy on the paddle, and on paddles like that, this can really add a counterbalance to make the swing weight feel a little bit better in your hand. So helps with grip, helps with swing weight. So we got a couple new things for 2022, and one of the things that we're really excited about are these Forest Edition paddles. My whole life is a timber cruise. I have to drive slower because I look at trees all the time, and I love wood. And I've started picking out the really selective, nice pieces of wood. Like, look at that, is almost a quilted piece of walnut you're looking at there. And that's a beautiful piece of cherry. And if you look at that, they're different images. The walnut has a walnut tree on it. The cherry paddle has a cherry tree on it. And these are both trippers, so the blade shape you're looking at is a tripper. If this was a bonga, the blade shape at the bottom would be a bonga. So we're actually working with a company called One Tree Planted, and when you buy one of these paddles, a tree is actually planted, and there'll be more information on the Badger website. Specifically, you may even be able to choose where you have the tree planted. And these paddles will be in stock on the Swift website, so go to swiftoutdoor.com if you want to get yourself one of these nice paddles. Some more special editions for this year. These are what we're calling backcountry edition paddles. And the ones you're looking at specific are the portager version of that. You could also get a backcountry edition paddle with, say, an image of a wolf crossing or a moose crossing. Some of the images that we've offered in the past will be available as stock backcountry paddles. This particular image, this one right here, has been really popular. Fiona designed an image, and she called it Girls Portage 2, and she sent it out as posters and shirts. And it's been a really popular image for us. All the portage signs and backcountry signs in Algonquin Park depicted dudes paddling, so she thought that maybe women should be represented as well, and it's been very popular. We've been asked many times to duplicate this on paddle blades, etc. So we thought we'd just offer it as a stock item, and we thought we'd better be fair to the guys as well. So there is a portager version with a fella as well. So when you pick one on the rack, pay attention. And we've been doing these before. They're not new, but they're super popular, and we're going to continue to offer the Canada Edition Badger paddles as well. A lot of people like to get these, and they go really well with the Canada Edition canoe. It's a good pairing. Our Cub Watercolors have been popular for a really long time, and we've got a bunch of them in stock this year, so come and pick a color. The cool thing about kids' paddles, everybody spends a lot of time worrying about sizing of a paddle. Personally, I think it's very simple with kids. When they're really, really small, if you gave them a technically appropriate paddle size, they would never reach the water. And as they grow, a 48-inch paddle seems to work well. So maybe when they're 3 years old, they can actually reach the water with it. They're not doing much anyway. My son used his paddle from when he was about 4 years old till he was about 10 or 11 years old, the 48-inch paddle. So personally, I think every kid should get a 48-inch paddle when they're small. And when they're too big for that paddle, they can get their first adult paddle. And then just a couple really cool additions of other versions of other watercolor paddles Fiona has done. This is one of our Sassafras blacked out paddles, which were really popular last year. That's a light piece of sassafras, varnished with a black stain on it. And those of you getting carbon tech packages, this is going to match your boat really well, and it's really light. Sassafras is a very light wood. And then just a couple of other cool watercolor paddles with variations on them. And these are kind of one-offs. You can see them in the store, but it's a hard thing to have online. They're all one of a kind. These are both paddles which I would consider solo paddles that are both for just two very different kinds of soloing. We'll start with the feather, which is essentially a version of the sliver. This is the sliver with a longer blade. So it's for those of you who do Canadian style solo paddling where you don't take your blade out of the water. That's specifically what this feather's for. It's a great extra paddle. It's a great paddle to fiddle around with at the cottage and have fun with. It's not necessarily a tripping paddle, too much blade to pull out of the water every time, but a really, really fun paddle for classic Canadian solo. Now, if you're a pack boat paddler, or if you like the Swift solo canoes and you're looking for a paddle for single bladed, this is the bonga, and this is the 51-inch bonga, the short size of the bonga. This is a great, I actually, when I fish out of a Swift pack boat, I like to use a single bladed paddle. I have a rod trolling off one side and I'm holding my paddle here. I'm not in a rush, so double bladed is not a big deal. And the great thing about this, it's a short, compact paddle with a bit of shaft length to it, but a shorter blade. So easier when you're sitting in a pack boat or in a solo canoe, a little less blade to pull out of the water every time you take a stroke. So the bonga is a really versatile paddle. It's also my favorite spare paddle. You can bring a shorter paddle along with you and have a great spare. And I tend to trip with a sliver, a really long blade. So when I get in shallow water, this is an excellent complement. When you're going on a canoe trip, you're supposed to bring a spare paddle along. Why not bring a paddle that makes sense to bring that you might use in a certain situation? So sliver is my deep water paddle. Bonga tends to be my shallow river paddle. So otter tail paddles are traditional shaped paddles where the entry point, the end of the paddle, the tip, is skinnier than it is up high on the blade of the paddle. This, a tripper, a Badger tripper, is a traditional otter tail paddle, fairly standard dimensions. This is a sliver, which is a skinnier, slightly stretched out version. Some people would call it a modified otter tail. It's just another variation of an otter tail paddle. Difference between these two paddles, one of them is going to pull a little bit more water on every stroke. One of them is going to be a little bit easier on your shoulders, your joints, your elbows, that sort of stuff. If you, like me, have sore shoulders, you may really enjoy paddling with the tripper. The real difference, Swift canoes are really efficient boats, and they glide along really nicely once you get them moving. It might take you 4 or 5 more strokes with this slightly smaller blade to get the boat moving along. But after you do so, you might find it's a little less stressful on your joints. So those are the sliver and the tripper. We also do another otter tail, which kind of falls between them. It's kind of got couple characteristics of both. It's wider like the Tripper up top. It's a little skinnier like the Sliver is at the bottom. It enters the water quietly, and in the arc of your stroke, because every canoe stroke has a bit of an arc to it, the part where you enter the water and you're fully parallel to the boat, your whole blade, the wide part, enters the water. So it's efficient and and quiet. This paddle also has a modified Northwoods grip, allowing you to grip it at the top or at the bottom, and also giving you a bit of help with swing weight, counterbalance. So those are the Badger versions of Ottertail paddles. And then these are the two Beaverdale paddles. So a Badger tail is our traditional Beavertail paddle. Long blade like a Sliver. Wider down here means if you say you get into shallow water in a river, you're going to have a little more volume on your blade. Also having that volume that at the end of your lever, you're going to pull more water and you're going to feel it more in your shoulders. So if you're like me and your shoulders don't like pulling as much water, this might be more blade. If you really want to move a lot of water, this is the Badger paddle that you want to go with. The Bong is also a very powerful paddle. This one's in Sassafras, which has a lot of flex to it. Is a great river paddle and a great all-rounder, especially when you don't have the depth. So all the Badger paddles that you see here are available online through Swift's web store, swiftoutside.com. So go check them out, and there's always a great stock in the store. Every adult paddle comes with a paddle sock. It's something we've done from the beginning. We don't like disposable plastic stuff that you throw away. So when you get your sock, your paddle, it comes with a sock that you can reuse and protect your paddle and throw it in the back of your truck for years afterwards, and you're not going to throw away a piece of plastic when you get it. The socks are also available individually. They come packaged like that, and those are also available at swiftoutside.com. And while we're looking up there, I might as well grab a couple of cans of the Badger wood oil. And we use Badger in our finishing process. It's a great all-natural product for you to use to maintain your Badger paddles, your Swift canoe parts, your cutting boards, your axe handles at home, your garden tools. It's a really good, safe product to protect your equipment with. Thanks for checking out the Badger 22 lineup, and if you want to know more about it, give Swift a call at 1-800-661-1429 or check out swiftoutside.com to buy yourself a beautiful Badger paddle.